It really bothers me how much philosophy has distanced itself from everyday life. It doesn't really impact the way that we live. No one's really going around thinking about philosophical topics unless you're like me and you just like that stuff. But what is the point if philosophy doesn't help us? Is it just white dudes jerking off, as I've seen some YouTube videos titled, and it can kind of seem that way at times. I want to try to change that perspective a little bit, so let's see how well I can do that. So in this video, I'm going to go over some aspects of philosophy and my ideas about how to incorporate those into your gameplay to try to improve gameplay from an entirely different angle than I see most people doing. Throughout this video, I will frequently reference Call of Duty as an example, not as an endorsement of Call of Duty. Believe me, this is not an endorsement, but hopefully Microsoft will change that opinion. As always, subscribe if you haven't already and like the video if you do find something of value here, because the like button lets me know that I'm not completely full of shit. So let me take you through my typical thought process when I play a game. I play with the class that I have used many times. I just go ahead and I select number 1. All right, good. Sometimes this works out great. I like to run around mindless, and it's fun when it works and everything is working in my favor. Oh no. More deaths, and now I'm starting to go downhill. Goddamn head glitch? Nope. Alright, different class. Alright game, you had your fun, now stop fucking with me. Why the hell would you spawn him there? You know what? I'm out. So what is so funny about this type of progression is that it is so typical for me and many of the people I play with, maybe minus, some of the cursing or the throwing of controllers and just the general outrage. But when looking at these stages like this, it becomes incredibly obvious that every single one of them is a reaction to what is happening to me. The game either gives me what I want or I start to lose control of my emotions. So then, let me ask you this question, and it's a question that I have been thinking about recently. In this scenario, am I in control of myself, or is the game in control of me? And that's a disturbing thought because the answer is pretty straightforward. Now let's check this out. So in 1845, a man by the name of Henry David Thoreau, you've probably heard of him, went to go live in the woods by himself for 2 years. While he's out there, he writes a series of meditations and he compiles them all into a text called Walden. And you might have heard of that book. It's a popular American book. While the text is filled with pages upon pages of his observations of nature, literally watching birds and ants and things like that, it also makes some very interesting observations about modern society and how one should live their life. Of course, keeping in mind that modern society means 1845 at the time of this writing. But it is absolutely incredible, like once you go back to read something like this, when they talk about modern society, we still have the same freaking problems today. So it's mind-blowing. The most prominent idea in this text is that one should live as simply and wisely as possible. Simply in that we should not strive to possess too many things, achievements, or anything else you can seek to possess. He recognized that these types of possessions seem to grab a hold of people and limit their freedom. Now, freedom is a huge concept, and there could be an entire lecture series on the various types of freedom and the transformations it has gone through the ages, but I'd rather not bore the shit out of you quite yet. For our purposes, just think of freedom as the opportunity to do whatever it is you would like to do. Rather than fall into habits, opinions, viewpoints, and other things that aren't really ours, we should seek to develop our own way of life and our own way of living. In one of his examples, he's talking about preparing students for an adult life, and he makes this pile driver of a quote. I mean that they should not play life or study it merely while the community supports them at this expensive game, but earnestly live it from beginning to end. All right, now I'm getting pumped up. So he is taking a jab at intellectuals and people of the day. He even makes mention of Adam Smith. If you're at all familiar with political history, Adam Smith is a big force. He kind of takes jabs at these guys because he's basically saying that they're masters of studying life without actually living it. The example that Thoreau uses is learning how to craft a knife by doing it yourself versus going to school and learning about metallurgy. At the end of that time, who the hell is more likely to cut themselves with a knife? It is the people that live life that have the greatest respect and understanding of it. Later on, he says that perhaps the hunter is the greatest friend of the animals hunted, not accepting the Humane Society. I'll just go ahead and leave that little nugget right there for you to ponder. So what does this have to do with improving gameplay? Right now, it kind of seems like this is the farthest it could ever be from improving video games, because you're talking about a dude from 1845. What the fuck does that have to do with 2022 and Call of Duty? Well, when doing this kind of work, it becomes easier and easier over time to see similar patterns pop up in very unexpected places. So what I began to do was this. I took my favorite gun class and I wiped it clean. No attachments. Can't get much more simple than that. Then I began to play the game. Not like I used to though. No. I tried to look at the maps as unique with their own strengths, weaknesses, and flow. Rather than habitually running into enemy gunfire, my go-to technique, I began to try and think about what to do. What would I do? And holy shit, is this hard to do. I never really knew how difficult it is to ignore COD instincts until I tried. But whenever I felt an impulse to jump around the corner, continue on in a gunfight, or challenge a sniper with my SMG at 100 yards, I ignored it and tried to decide for myself what to do. Now, I'm not going to lie and say that my stats instantly improved, as is kind of the general trend with videos like this. Usually, good improvements take time to stack up and become major advances. The important thing is that you are set up on the right path in the long run. Over a few matches, I tried to really understand the gun I was using. I ignored the impulse to immediately throw every attachment I could think of onto this thing, maybe a sight in this match, and maybe I'd throw on a stock in the next one, but I really took my time to try to feel how the weapon and my movement changed from map to map and attachment to attachment. After a couple of hours of playing this way, I was shocked at the final class I came up with because it is not at all what I was expecting and did not resemble the classes I played with before. A barrel that does more headshot damage? I never thought of myself as someone who would play this way. But somewhere along the line I decided that it would help me in the long run to train to hit headshots, so I made a class that resembled that. Now, this gun has a distinct feel to it, and it's not because of the attachments it has, but because I came up with it all on my own. It's my gun. It's not an MLG Pro setup, or some setup some YouTuber told me to use, or even one thrown together by my old COD habits, but one that I freely chose. So it's super easy to scoff at this little exercise and mock it for being an exercise of freedom. But it really is. And Thoreau somewhat anticipated this stance when he said that the greatest gains and values are farthest from being appreciated. Too often we are just led around by whatever habits we build up, or what the opinions of others tell us to do, or whatever seems like common sense. Rather than following that mindless and unfree approach, I am going to opt for my own from now on. One more thought that Thoreau has in relation to everything else we have been discussing is that our deepest truths about ourselves come out in everything we do, and what we practice kind of becomes who we are. If we practice mindlessness and exercise our habits when we play games, we are sort of reinforcing that mindset in our everyday lives too. Of course, these are all great things to think about, and nothing is completely certain. There's no truth out there that has been really discovered, unless you want to go down that rabbit hole. The most important thing is that you think about these ideas, is that they spark some sort of thought process in your brain and you come to a conclusion that's entirely your own. There's so much more to Walden and Henry David Thoreau than I was able to cover here, but go ahead and leave your thoughts down in the comment section below if you would like to hear more of that, or not. You know, this is kind of your channel more than it is mine. Also, if you would like to read the book, I will leave a free copy down in the description because it was printed in like 18 something. It was before copyright, so all this stuff is pretty much free. And I'll also leave which chapters I think you should read, because this book does incorporate a lot of bird watching. So a lot of observations of nature that aren't exactly entertaining. So I'll go ahead and leave those down there as well. So thank you so much for watching this video if you made it to the end, and I will see you in the next video.